I'm Brian Simpson.
I'm Brent Manning, and we're the co-founders of Riverbend Malt House. We started the Malt House because Brian and I have a strong background in sustainability, and when we looked at the craft beer industry, we realized that the farmer was disconnected from this rapidly expanding business opportunity, and the key link in that supply chain was the malt house, and that malt house is missing in the Southeast. And so we set about to start Riverbend Malt House as a way of connecting the farmer to the craft beer industry.
Traditionally, most of the malt that's used in craft beer has come from 2 or 3 large commercial malt facilities throughout the world. We look at Riverbend Malt House's mission as a way to close that carbon footprint and bring the malt closer to its local craft beer community.
When Riverbend first got started, we reached out to the staff of the North Carolina Agriculture Extension Program, as well as staff at the USDA Agricultural Research Service. In particular, Dr. David Marshall at the USDA ARS lab was really helpful in a number of different ways, helping us understand the agronomics of growing barley and also which varieties would work best in our area, and also helped to connect us to a network of growers that were interested in a niche product and working with some of our special demands that we have as maltsters instead of just basic grain buyers on the commodity market. So Dr. Marshall was nice enough to host us several years ago at his research lab for a really basic Q&A about what we could do in North Carolina to improve the quality of our barley.
Barley traditionally is just a feed grain in North Carolina, and so the quality of the grain was not extremely high. Especially in terms if you wanted to make malt production, develop malt varieties from that. And so what we did was try to cross into adapted wheat or adapted barleys, those characteristics that enable maltsters to make good malt from barley.
There are very few brewers that do their own malting, but all brewers work directly with their malt suppliers. And, by local, I get to interact with Brian and Brent, on a monthly, if not weekly basis. I get to talk to them all the time. From a grower's aspect, we get to come out here and look at barley fields and get some sense of how it's going. And then the breeding programs are pretty cool because ultimately for a brewer, it's about what is this going to taste like when I make it into beer.
There were over 20,000 acres of barley produced in or cultivated in North Carolina, but all of that barley was essentially kept for the feed market. And when we talk about using barley for malt, we need a higher quality, lower protein product. And so it requires the farmer to grow the barley in a slightly different fashion, clean it more thoroughly, but in exchange for those extra steps, they get a higher price point per bushel.
And once we had the discussions with them and started to develop the idea of a niche market, which may actually bring a premium price to them, it seemed a little more lucrative than just growing for the feed grade market.
Well, and farmers are an enterprising group. I mean, they are always on the lookout for new markets, and they really liked our approach of agreeing on a price outside of that commodity market loop that they had been stuck in for the last several years. And so while at first they thought we were crazy offering a set price before the grain was even planted, after a few seasons and wild climate shifts, our approach started to make a lot of sense, and we've since got a larger group of growers that we work with that believe in that approach.
We had to reach out to them on a personal level to try to bring them into the fold, if you will, to connect them to the craft beer community. In order to do that, we went farmer to farmer and field to field and shook a lot of hands and had a lot of conversations about how to get that feed grade barley into a malt quality. So far we've been very successful at making those relationships.
And the barleys that we're developing, they really wouldn't have a place if there wasn't someone like Brent and Riverbend to take that to a commercial product. And otherwise we just develop the varieties and no one would grow them.
Right.
And so we hope to get the best quality we can so that the market can take off.
So why do we need to malt grain at all? While it is possible to make alcohol from raw grains, the process is extremely inefficient. That's where the maltster comes in. The maltster manages the process of the malting of the grains over that 7-day process in a manner that controls the breakdown of the starches and simple sugars inside of each individual kernel by those enzymes. If we do our job properly, the brewer can complete a batch of beer in 5 to 6 hours with a high yield per pound of malt produced.
The benefits of working directly with your maltster, and then, interesting enough with the local thing, we can know the grower as well. Is you get to know exactly what the ingredients are that go into your beers. You get to know, when you get to know a maltster, maltsters do an enormous amount of processing for us. A lot of people don't realize that the science of malting goes hand in hand with the science of brewing.
So the process of malting takes approximately 7 days to execute and involves 3 main steps: steeping, germinating, and kilning. When the barley is harvested, it's typically at 11% moisture content. Over the course of steeping, we raise that moisture content into the mid-40s through 3 wet-dry cycles. That initiates the release of enzymes that break down the cell walls inside each kernel into starches and simple sugars, which are later extracted in the brewing process. So, after steeping, we go into the floor malting stage, which is active germination on the floor, where the grain is in a 6-inch deep bed and raked by hand every 6 to 8 hours over a period of 4 days.
The floor malting technique's been around for at least a couple of 100 years as we do it. We use a traditional floor malt process, which means we germinate our grain on the floor. During that time, we're actually raking the malt to get warm air out, oxygen in, and keep a really truly hand-done artisan product.
The key piece of equipment for a floor malting operation is the rake. And in our case, our rake is a custom designed piece of equipment based on a pencil sketch that Brian found in an old textbook that dates back to the mid-1800s. We took this to a local metal fabricator and began what has become a long journey of creating the perfect rake. We're now in our 3rd or 4th iteration of it, but we feel like we've got the design largely nailed down. And if you can envision, basically it's just something very similar to an old style plow that you would attach to any type of farm animal, but in our case, we're the ones pulling the plow through the grain 2 to 3 times a day. To stop the germination process, we go into the 3rd and final phase, which is called kilning, where a large volume of warm air is applied to the grain bed to dry it down and deactivate those enzymes. And in the final stage of kilning, actually develop a little bit of color and flavor as well by applying higher temperature air to the grain bed.
We perform the kilning process over another 24 hours. So end to end, it takes about 7 days to create one batch of malt for us.
So after the kilning process, the grain is now considered malt, and we have one step left. We have to clean it. And this cleaning process involves several different machines which remove the rootlet material and any thin kernels from the finished product. So once we clean the grain, we bag it up into 50-pound bags or 1-ton super sacks and ship it to breweries throughout the Southeast. The road ahead for Riverbend is a pretty exciting one. When we first started out, we sized our operation to basically provide the raw materials to a 10-barrel system here in Asheville, which is roughly a 300-gallon batch of beer. As demand rose, we scaled up our operations to meet the demands of several breweries of that size. The road ahead for us, we just see a continued steady growth, which is lock in step with the North Carolina statistics. And the next step for us will just be broadening our network of farmers as well as the scale of our operations to work with our current crop of clients, but as well as the ever-growing marketplace in the Southeast. The significance of the new Belgium Order was pretty exciting for us. It represented an exciting opportunity to connect a North Carolina farmer and his heirloom rye grain that's been growing in the South since the Civil War to 37 states across the nation, which was by far our largest distribution to date. And it was really exciting working with the staff at New Belgium to get the level of technical feedback that we got from them, as well as the level of support of craft malt. I think both those were really significant to Riverbend early on.
Well, a few of us came out here right after we decided to build a brewery out here to see what the craft beer scene was like. We came out for Asheville Beer Week, and that was a lot of fun. But our whole mission was the four of us from Fort Collins Brewery, three of us from brewing and one from QA. Just wanted to see what it was like out here, what kind of beer was being made out here, and somebody just clued us into the fact that there was a little tiny startup malt house out on the outskirts of town, and we should go check it out. And we came out here and we met Brent and Brian, and we're just really blown away by what they were doing. They're super passionate about malt.
Yeah, the recipe development was spectacular. Building a recipe around the malt rather than just having a recipe and ordering malt is a significantly different pattern for a brewer.
So the ingredients are pretty straightforward. We've got some rye malt, we've got some barley malt, it's about 35% rye, and then a little bit of caramel malt for color. And then we went with a really broad spectrum of hops to play off of that rye spiciness. So we've got some Cascades, we've got some Simcoe, we've got some Galaxy that give it that big fruity flavor, and we've got some Mosaics. What really struck me is they want to be to malting what we are as craft brewers are to beer. We've always seen malt as a commodity, and what we make is the uniqueness, and they're kind of shattering that they're bringing the uniqueness to the table in the first place, and then we can take it and make something even more unique with that.
The process that Riverbend Malt has developed over the last 3 years creates an artisan product that can be available to brewers in our region that they can't get anywhere else on the planet. That offers them an opportunity to use a unique malt and create unique beer profiles like no other place in the world.
In addition to connecting the farmers to the brewing industry, we're really excited about being able to play a role in the development of a Appalachian or Southeastern style beer. You know, we look to the Pacific Northwest and their black IPAs and the fruity hop bombs of Southern California, and we're thinking, wouldn't it be exciting if we can play a role in developing a style of beer that has some provenance here in the Southeast? And we're really hoping that the brewers continue to take advantage of our product line to develop something special.